My name is Cathy Collins, and I'll be co-hosting Airing Addiction with Lisa Blanchard.
No one story is the same as someone else's. Everybody's journey is different.
Same thing on the table.
Having run substance use treatment programs for over 20 years, and trying to make sure that we are welcoming to all. I love the idea that kind of having that exposure and that affirming place, even for one person, impacts that milieu, which then can impact maybe the broader recovery community, the community at large. I mean, I really love that thought. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of Airing Addiction. This is Recovery Month in September, so we are doing more frequent podcasts, so I'm really glad that you're joining us today. I'm Lisa Blanchard. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Services at Spectrum Health Systems, and with me I have my co-host, Catherine Collins, who will introduce our first guest.
Yay! Hi, everyone. My name is Cathy Collins, and I'm in the outreach team, and I have the honor of introducing today's guest, which I'm so delighted because it's always great to introduce a friend in recovery and someone who's actually celebrating a recovery anniversary this month, my friend, Tyler. Hi, Tyler.
Hey, Cathy. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, it's so nice that you can be with us from the West Coast. You're our second West Coast guest, and we appreciate you getting up early because it is live and early for you. If you wouldn't mind, we'd love to hear a little bit about your recovery journey that you'll be celebrating this month and sort of like how you got into recovery and how your story is today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, interestingly enough, it was about 4 years ago to the day where I was at New England Recovery Center. My sobriety date is September 5th of 2016. And yeah, after a little detox stint, I went to New England Recovery Center, and since then things have been going really well. But to go into my story just a little bit, I was introduced to alcohol first. I was around 13, and a few friends and I we stole a bottle of really terrible vodka from our parents, and we all told each other we were going to sleep over the other's house, and we went in the woods and we started to drink, and it was all of our first time drinking. And you know, the three other guys I was with, they were kind of done after, you know, a little swig, but I really wanted to kind of experiment and keep going. So I immediately took it, you know, to the top, went, you know, and we had this Gatorade bottle filled with vodka, and I got way too drunk, started vomiting, and ended up throwing the bottle of vodka in the woods. The very next day I woke up and I wanted some relief, the relief that the alcohol provided. So I proceeded to go back to the woods and find the bottle that was covered in dirt. And, you know, that set the tone for pretty much my entire history with drugs and alcohol. Short thereafter, I was introduced to marijuana, and that provided more of a relief that I could hide from my parents. So I'm about, you know, 13, 14 years old, and as a child, I was fairly anxious and not too comfortable in my own skin, like pretty much all human adolescents are. And I sought that relief, you know, with intensity, and kind of everything else took a back seat to finding some sort of calm. And you know, characteristically, drugs have been very good at providing that calm for me. The issue was, as it progressed, the problems piled up, and life became way too challenging to manage. And so, you know, the progression was very steady for me. And short thereafter, when I was around 15, I was introduced to pills, and that kind of presented a shift for me. So I got into oxycodone and benzodiazepines, especially Xanax. And I remember the first time I ever took an opiate. I used to buy marijuana from my friend's older brother, and I remember seeing these pills, and I was really intrigued because I'd see him take them, and then about 30 minutes later, he'd, you know, just have a wave of calm over him. And so all I've ever wanted in my life is calm and just some sort of like sigh of relief. And so I just remember begging, please, like, let me try it, let me try it. And the day he caved and gave me the pill, he said, here you go, but this is going to ruin your life. And it was just such a, you know, prominent moment in my life, because I took that pill willingly and I took it with excitement and intrigue. And yeah, and I remember I smoked it for the oxycodone for the first time, and I got the wave of relief that even alcohol or smoking pot didn't do. So yeah, right there, that was my thing. That's what I wanted to do always. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the thing that I have to do to be okay. Forget what anybody else says. This is going to be my life now. And at a young age, when, you know, there's a whole lot of transitions and, you know, not my body, my brain wasn't developed, introducing, you know, a hard drug really can kind of screw someone up who's, you know, has a predisposition to anxiety and a predisposition to negative self-talk and feeling pretty down about himself. And yeah, I'm a child. My parents got divorced at a very, very young age. I don't even know, like 4 or 5. And yeah, so there was always that feeling like, what did I do to cause this? What could I have done to make this not happen? And kind of throughout my childhood, I tried to impose myself on people and places to make the outcome change. And when it didn't go my way, it was always my problem. So yeah, so it, you know, after the introduction of opiates, I started to become a chemist. I started, you know, what can I add to this to make the perfect cocktail of relief? And the perfect cocktail of relief was always, I needed to add more and more quantity wise and more, you know, to introduce different substances. So, you know, towards the end of it, it was, you know, I was drinking all throughout the day, and I was, you know, oxycodone is definitely my drug of choice. But when I couldn't get that, I would go to heroin, which, like, to be upfront, it scared the hell out of me. It always did. I never felt comfortable using heroin. But like, the line that I drew in the sand was always crossed, because if I couldn't get my fix, I was going to do what I had to do. So, yeah, like, I always did what I had to do to get the next one. And any moral that I had instilled upon me, any goal or dream that I had growing up, it just was totally put by the wayside to feel okay, because that's what I thought the only thing I was able to do to feel okay was to get high. So yeah.
And then toward the end, it just wasn't working anymore. Or what was your sort of moment where you said, I need to do something about this? It's just.
Yeah, so, well, I do want to say, so throughout this whole time, I mean, so I started using around 13, and I didn't get sober until I was 23. So in the 10 years, there was, you know, well over a dozen detoxes and treatment programs that I attended. So there was, I usually would get a window of willingness, which came about by lack of money, or my parents really coming down on me, or maybe I was in a relationship and the girl wasn't really happy with my life choices. So I wanted to change. And like, in the moment when I said, like, I'll stop, I'll put it down, I meant it with sincerity. The issue was, as soon as my body started feeling better, my mind started feeling a little clearer, I'd get loaded every single time. And I was kind of left at a loss, like, what the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I stop even though I want to? So when that started to happen, it was kind of a stark realization, and it was, you know, significantly concerning. And the only way to quell that concern was to do more drugs. So yeah, it's by the end, you know, when I was 23, I was left with an ultimatum pretty much by everyone in my life. So I was kicked out. I wasn't welcome at my parents' house, which I relied on them for everything. So I was without a home. couldn't hold a job. I mean, I was incapable of showing up for work because if the drug dealer reached out to me when I was at work, I had to go because he was calling. And so, yeah, I was living to use drugs, and I was living to drink, and the anxiety that I've always had in my life, it started kind of creeping back up. And even when I would use, or even when I would drink, it would still be there. And so I wasn't even getting the relief that I was seeking. So yeah, that's where I was. And when I went into treatment the last time, to be honest, I wasn't going in with the sincere desire for abstinence. I wasn't going in with the sincere desire to be a better guy. I just wanted to, like, I needed a break. I wanted to feel better. I didn't want to be sick anymore. So that was like my beginning. Yeah.
So many great thoughts as I listen to your story, Tyler. And so one of them is, you seem so calm now, right? And so, you talk really eloquently in your story about how that's how you would find calm, was using substances to calm, underlying anxiety, all the adolescent challenges that kind of everybody feels, but that's the only way that you had found relief. And that calm, it eventually turns to chaos, right? And it doesn't work to calm you, but that's the only thing you know to do. So you keep trying it, increasing the amounts, changing what you're using, adding things. Tell me a little bit about how you find that calm now. What do you do now when you need that kind of calm?
So I think, when I reflect and go back to the, precipice of my using, and, the content there was really, you can describe it in the way that I thought I had all the answers to all my problems. So I really did. I believed I knew best. And despite, what the external circumstances and internal circumstances were for me, because it was just chaos, I still thought that I could, figure a way out. And my life today, and it was kind of characteristic of my early recovery too, was that I kind of had to let go of the steering wheel of my life, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I think, for me, mentorship is really important in my life. I have people that I admire, respect, that I have a community around me that is personal to me. It's my community, and it's something that's, I'm involved and engaged with, and I am grateful to have, people, especially a lot of guys in my life, who I can reach out to and say, hey, this is going on. I don't know what to do. And it's, in the beginning, it was very hard for me, because it was, my pride and ego would get in the way, because oh, I should know best. But the truth is, when I can, gain a perspective that, doesn't come natural to me, there's so much freedom there. And it kind of can open up my mind that sometimes can really snap shut. My mind's like a clam sometimes. It's just like opening and closing. And the only way I found to open it is to have added perspective introduced. And with that, comes a mindfulness practice that I, today really rely upon. It's a morning routine that I wake up and I'll journal, I'll meditate. If I have time, I'll read a passage of, some book, daily reflections, or, book of poetry or philosophy, whatever, something I'm interested in. And yeah, in the meditation practices, like early recovery, when I started it, it was really hard and I hated it. But I stuck with it because I had some little bit of trust that the people who told me that they rely on meditation and a mindfulness practice, I trusted that they weren't, full of it. They were telling me the truth.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's one misconception about mindfulness. So I meditate daily. I practice mindfulness and have integrated a lot of mindfulness into our programs. And, that it's really awareness. And so that idea that mindfulness is always supposed to be positive, in meditation is always supposed to be positive, isn't always true, right? Like you can hate it, and some days are better than other days, and it just is what it is, right? It's just kind of being here in the present moment, on purpose, like John Kabat-Zinn says. So I love that that's part of your practice, because I think that, it's something that people kind of feel is a little woo-woo sometimes, but really can really enhance everybody, regardless of what it is, especially now, right? I think we're all having a difficult time in some way or another with the pandemic. And so that's really a practice you can take with you, regardless. So one of the things I think would be a great transition, so one of the things you said is how important mentorship and community is. And I think that speaks directly to the work that you've developed. So I wonder if it's a good opportunity for us to kind of shift gears about what path you've taken your career on, and what you do now, because I think it's a lot of mentorship.
Yeah. So, to go back, I remember I was about, I don't know, 5 months sober, and, and luckily I moved out to California, right after I left New England Recovery Center, and I was introduced to a lot of people who made recovery attractive for me, which I am really fortunate for, because I always thought it was, if I was going to be sober, it was probably going to lead to this mundane existence, and I was going to be settling for less, and there's going to be no
boring.
Yeah,
never have fun again.
Yeah, and I really did. I thought it was just going to be this boring way of life, and very quickly I was able to see there was visual proof that wasn't the case. So I remember, I started to recover and get well fairly quickly, and I had a strong desire to attract people to recovery the way that was given to me. So I remember I was trying to get a job in, the recovery world, and it's very hard when you're newly sober to do that. So I remember I was applying to all these places, and I'm like, please, like, I was doing the, like, you don't understand, like, I know I'm only like 4 months sober, but I am good. Like, and so eventually I was persistent enough where I got a job, and I was, working a graveyard shift for 12 hours at a sober living for no money. And I loved it. There was just so many different people who had so many, different backgrounds and circumstances and challenges. And it gave me an opportunity to not give my opinion, but share my experience and listen to their challenges. And I absolutely loved it. So that was my introduction to, what's now a career for me. But I've held, many positions in the recovery world. And eventually I got to a place about a year ago now where, I had been a recovery coach, and I had been, mentoring young men and adolescents for, 2 years. And I wanted to, create something for that helped me. I saw something missing, and it was really rooted in two things. There was what I saw just from my experience. There was a lack of familial communication, and I found that, I'd be working with these young men, and they would start to get well, and they'd start to, start creating lives for themselves, but their families were still kind of hindered with the memories of the past, and kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And, when's so-and-so gonna, steal from me again, or when's he gonna, pick up again? And that is what I found over and over again, is that, the person of concern can start to heal pretty quick, but the family, sometimes it takes more time. So to do that, congruently, but individually, if they can each make commitments and heal themselves on an individual level, when they can come together and we can, have a family meeting once a week, that's where I can, like, physically see the growth happening. So that's what I focus on. But it's been an exciting journey, and there's definitely been, ups and downs like anything, and I've learned along the way, but like the mentorship that I've had, has helped me kind of stay on course and try to, grow what I'm creating.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about that because, as you know, COVID has brought us so many challenges. The pandemic has been difficult. So you're sort of starting up a business in the middle of a pandemic, which
Yes.
is remarkable and commendable. But I'm wondering, has your mentorship mostly become online, meaning your skills now and your business is transferable? It doesn't matter if you're mentoring someone next door or it could be someone back east. Like it sounds like I could be sort of like as you're saying it, I'm thinking, I know a family that needs exactly that. Like you can take on those challenges from afar,
Absolutely.
correct? I mean, you can do sort of telephone Zoom meetings just like we're having here, so you can relate to families and they can you can guide them through the process.
Yeah, definitely. And everything's really transitioned primarily to the virtual world. And that has its challenges in itself, but for the most part, um, it's compatible and conducive with what I'm doing. So there are added benefits too. Like if a family member is, I have a situation where a family member is abroad, they're able to participate in the family meetings. Whereas, if this, if the coronavirus wasn't going on, that probably wouldn't be the case. So in certain cases, it's actually a benefit, but there is nothing like one-on-one face-to-face
Right.
communication. So to work around that and to acknowledge it, I think is really important. Not to kind of hide around it and just say this might be a little more challenging and there's going to have to be more accountability present. So with the clients that I am working with, there is a lot more follow-up than there normally would be, because virtually it's like you could be in your room right now and shut the computer and then go off and really start to digress.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that face-to-face communication, there's just more intimacy that it's hard to get here. But it's great. Like without this, I wouldn't be talking to you guys because
We've all figured Zoom out at a whole new level.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking it's interesting when you were sort of telling your story, there's two things that stuck out. And I don't know, maybe Lisa, you want to touch on this too, but what I heard you say is, and I've heard this said before, I don't know the statistics, but that if you start using drugs before your brain is developed, I mean, you did that. Clearly, I did too. The brain development. So, I mean, you can't probably convince people to wait until your brain is, hey, great idea. Let's all wait until our kids are 25 to have their first drink. I mean, what an ideal scenario so that their brains are completely developed. But I think it speaks to the fact now, I don't know what the rule is in California, the law, but like I was thinking about marijuana being legal now. Like,
Sure.
That's going into children's brains before they're developed. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, just as someone who, that was a progress along the way. That wasn't enough eventually, but what your thoughts about, there's so many debates about, is it a gateway drug or is it just incidental, or I'm just curious.
That's a tough one. It's, because I mean, my experience was always, it followed along the path of excess, and one thing leading to another, and the one thing that I'm taking is never going to be enough. So like I was always searching for something that wasn't necessarily attainable. The only relief I felt like I was just about to get what I was looking for, but I never like fully got there. And I don't think that's the experience of most people. Just if I can look back my high school days, there was a lot of a lot of my peers could recreationally use marijuana or drink on the weekends, and it wouldn't impede on their life or their athletic performance or whatever. I do think that it's so accessible, particularly in California, that it's in your face all the time. specifically marijuana in pop culture. It's very in your face all the time. And that was something that I didn't grow up with. So I'm not sure. It's like I had to go to a drug dealer to get marijuana, and now you just go to the store. You have your older brother go to the store, and so the circumstances are a little different, but I think, for people who are concerned, or parents who are concerned with their child, kind of, is my child an addict? Is he not an addict? There can be a dialogue that's opened up, that's honest and not manipulative. And it's not overbearing. And I think I don't know, I'm not a parent, but I'm sure it's so hard to have a conversation with your child about drugs. But that's something that I do frequently, is I have conversations with adults and their parents about drugs, and to open it up and to put everything on the table, it's really helpful. And if you can have the parents being vulnerable and the kids being vulnerable, that's where the progress can really happen. So no one's really beating around the bush. It's like, what's your experience with drugs? How did it make you feel?
Yeah. Kind of setting the stage so that neither side is judgmental of the other side's position.
Yeah. And one of the things that that struck me, even as you told your story, that's so related to this, is that idea that, you were starting to drink even that very first time, right? Like everybody took a sip, you drank a ton, vomited, went back for it the next day. We don't know enough about who's going to take that path and who's not. Right. We know that not everybody, the first time they drink, the first time they use marijuana, even if they use it recreational throughout all high school and college and all the binge drinking college, there's some percent of those kids that won't develop a problem and will go back to either functional use or not use and be okay. And there's some percent that won't. And we just don't know enough as a field, to know. There's no test you can take, right? That's going to say, if you start to drink at 13, this is the path you're going to follow. And so I talk to a lot of parents who have the same kinds of questions that they have for you. And that's kind of what I share is, experimenting doesn't equal forever addiction. But we also don't know, I've heard said, like, we when to talk about it as a gateway drug, with marijuana is, not every buddy who smokes marijuana becomes a long-term, individual with addiction.
Yeah.
But probably everybody who has a long-term, addiction started with marijuana. We do know that, right? So, there's just not enough to know about it. So it's that open dialogue, right? I really love that approach, that kind of non-judgmental, like, those are important conversations to have, and for parents to have with their kids, for mentors and teachers to have with their kids, and giving people, the kids the resources they need, especially now where everybody can be a bit more isolated, right? They're may not be in a school or in a school every day, or, around, positive, mentors around them. Right. So, well, one of the other questions I had for you, is there anything, it could be about any of your treatment experiences, but of course I'll ask about your experience at New England Recovery Center, since that was your last treatment experience before you entered long-term recovery. Is there anything, that you learned in that program or that stuck with you that you still, you feel is important or you still use today?
Sure. I remember it was one of the first, like, residential programs that I went to that, it was a tight ship. There was kind of a schedule that was adhered to, and everybody it was like a well-oiled machine in a good way. But I remember we had a break there, and there was I remember some counselors, I wish I remember their name, but they were, they did make recovery attractive as well, and they were very matter of fact, and they spoke eloquently about, the nature of substance abuse in a way that I was able to relate to. And I remember we had some downtime, and there was two clients there, and they very newly sober, probably within a week, and they were playing a duet they each had a guitar, and they were playing guitar. And I remember sitting and listening. They were so talented that I was like, wow, like, these, people are very talented, and, addicts and alcoholics are very talented people. They're just, you know, misguided and they're lost. And it started kind of making me curious about what my talents were. So I was very, it was what it was, what kind of provided the ability for that to happen and grow was that, you know, the New England Recovery Center was a really safe place, where I was able to kind of let my guard down that it's always up, and just be in the group. And, you know, the circumstances at the time when anyone's ever in treatment, it's, you know, you're not really killing it in life. And it's hard. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are frustrated with you and all that. But kind of to have a moment to just listen to some music by, you know, two people that were starting a journey that, you know, is a lifelong thing, unfortunately. It was really beautiful in hindsight. It was just a really nice experience.
That begs this question in my head as a recovery person. Have you, touch with anyone that was in your little group of people from your recovery time there at NERC?
There's actually, I mean, there's a few people that I am friends with on Facebook, and actually one who I was at the New England Recovery Center with, he reached out to me because he's celebrating a year. And it was just, it was awesome. It made my day when I heard that. So, yeah, it's just so interesting. Kind of everything's come full circle and being on, you know, with you guys 4 years to the day, like.
Great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I love it. I mean, it's just so worked out for recovery month too. I mean, because it's such a celebration. You know, we've been fortunate that we planned airing addictions each week for the month, and the stories, like I was thinking you used the word vulnerable when you were there, being able to be vulnerable. And I was thinking when you were telling your story, how vulnerable, and as a mentor, you're so inspiring. Like I can see you, I'm inspired by you and your story. Like you actually took the time to find, I feel like, wow, I've been sober all these years. I really don't even know what I'm good at yet. And like, I think about that all the time. Like, okay, you know, what is my interest? Okay, I love reading. I can't really get paid to read for a living. But I hear you and I hear that little snippet and I think that is really the impetus for like changing your life. I just want to be happy. And I, you know, tap into the, you know, the untapped potential. Because like you say, I think we're all pretty talented people. We've just misguided. And I love the fact that now your talent, you're giving back in a professional way what was given to you because you recognize the value of it. And when I hear the stories, it chokes me up because I know what a gift recovery is to someone. Forget about our families. That's like a whole sidebar. It's the fact that you mentioned having no morals and values. Yeah, me either. And it's like, now you have them. We're looking like at a respectable man who is like, I'm really inspired by what you have now. And it's almost like you are someone else's dream. They can't imagine being in your shoes, and you're amazing. I feel like just that's what recovery does.
Thank you.
Cool. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I too, like this is my favorite part. And I said this right before we started the podcast, and I was just asking Tyler a little bit about kind of how long were you with us? And, you know, and as treatment providers, especially when you run inpatient and residential, right, you don't always get to see people unless they come back, right? And we know, like you had several treatment episodes before that was your last one. So we know that every step is an important step and could be the last before long-term recovery. But as treatment providers, we don't always see when that is the last step, right? We don't see when people then leave our treatment program and then go off and have 4 years of long-term recovery and are giving back to the recovery world and are in such a wonderful space. So this is a real treat for me to hear that. And I think for all of our staff to hear that and be inspired, and to inspire others who might be, you know, sitting in a treatment program now or about to enter one and know that it can be different. And so one of the things that struck me about your experience at NERC that I think is just so important for everybody in their own journeys is that both the structure, that, you know, lives in active addiction are so unstructured. And so that in whatever ways you can start to introduce that structure, that will then help inform kind of how you structure your life later, on your own terms, not on the program's terms, but also safety, the fact that it felt like a safe place. I'm so happy to hear, because that's what anybody needs in order to let that guard down, right? In order to let that down into be open to what there is to offer, whether that's the staff in the group curriculum and the individual sessions, or the other clients, like you did, right? Be open to what their message is. You have to be in a safe space. So thank you so much for highlighting those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was, thank you. I was thinking regarding the safe space and being there, and like anyone who might be watching this, I know your mentorship is geared toward men and families and reconnecting families. But if there's a family watching this who might be struggling with the communication, like, is that something you'd be willing to have a conversation and guide the family to, even if they have a daughter? So that you could guide them to someone who has sort of your approach, because I see it with everybody, not just, I think there's absolutely a need for this in your community, in the, males in recovery, but I'm wondering, you'd be willing to.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And something that I tried my best to focus on is collaboration with, people who are like-minded and who do what I do, and especially clinicians who, kind of have that oversight. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, for the past 3 years is networking with other providers who, are able to work with families and be helpful, because I have to kind of know where I'm good and where, I have room for improvement, or where other people can be better. So I have to kind of know my inadequacies in that area, because, if I don't think I can help you, I'm not going to help you. But I'm going to find someone who will be able to. So that's kind of what I preach, and it's I have to be really honest with myself, and something where that's a testament to separating my recovery from my work. And that's mission number one for me, because if I'm not doing that, I don't have anything else. Because if I start to mix the two, then I get confused, and I'm like, is this work my part of my recovery? And it's not. I can share my experience, which is my recovery, to those who I work with. And then on the outside, I can do my own recovery work and my mindfulness practice. And from there, life gets good, and life, builds itself.
Yeah, it sounds like, without even realizing it, the people at NARC, when you were there, were sharing their own experience in recovery too. And I'm like curious. I almost feel like going back and seeing, who was it? Are they still here? Because it would be like so nice for them to hear what an impact they had on you. I love that, because I'm always, half in, half out about, do I share, do I not share? And now I'm completely out there. Everyone knows. I mean, and people have known for a long time, but I'm hoping my experience helps when I share it with others, because I hear you and I know it does, because I hear it had funneled down through the clinical when someone was willing to share with you.
Yeah.
And so now that we're in this pandemic world, like we talked about earlier, right, where you could technically help anybody anywhere, and you pulled family members, out of the country and things like that. Have you opened, or have you considered opening your work to, not just local and being available?
Yeah. And that's something that we're doing right now. I work with, I have pretty much have clients all over the country right now, which is really cool. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit of this unfortunate circumstance, and it's also interesting to connect with other providers throughout the country, and that's given me an opportunity to do that. So kind of see what other people are doing, and from them I can learn. And it's all just about gathering information, seeing what other people do, and it's yeah.
And you were saying, I think you have a partner in this business that's working with you as well?
Yes, yeah, I do. His name is Marcos. He's awesome. I've known him for the 4 years essentially since I came to California, and he was a real paramount person when it came to enticing me about recovery.
Mhm.
He made it look very appealing, and he taught me a lot. And we have a good yin and yang thing going on. So yeah.
So how do people reach you, right? So somebody listening now anywhere in the country, whether it's providers, whether it's families, whether it's individuals, striving for in recovery, how do they find you and the services that you have to offer?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. You can go on my website. It is sahacollective.com, Saha, Saha. And Instagram, it's a good way to reach me. Try to be pretty active on there. And on my website, you'll be able to find my phone number, email, and you can kind of read about who we are, what we do, and how we can help.
Does the name Saha represent anything special?
So it's a word commonly used in Eastern Europe, and it has a very kind of loose, broad definition, but it can range anywhere from clean-minded to sober to clear and clarity. So it's kind of like what I'm trying to represent, which is like all sorts of thing in one, and it's just kind of about like the journey of life and just
It's beautiful. We only have a few minutes left because we like to be courteous to our guests and keep it at around 45 minutes. But we have a couple questions that we'd love. Do you think that at the top of your mind, there's anything that you'd like to impart to people that are listening to this that we might not have covered? You have such a hopeful message. You've made recovery appealing. You've made business look appealing. You've really really have a great story. I'm wondering if there's anything we missed that you would want to impart to people listening about recovery.
Sure. I think there's something I work on with my clients is, because a lot of what I do is goal setting. And then we start to drop a plan of action and figure out how we can attain the goals. What I've found that gets overlooked a lot is people going right into writing down what their goals are. I think the first thing, if someone's struggling with, moving forward in their life, they have to kind of look at what their fears are. Things that they perceive are obstacles. Because a lot of times we say, I can't do this because of this. And it's a perceived obstacle that we think is in the way. And from there, we can look at what is this a fear of? Is it a fear of failing? Is it a fear of inadequacy? Am I just not going to measure up? So that's, what I love to work on is hearing about people's fears, because the truth is most of them are all the same. Everybody has the same exact fears. And like this fear of failure holds a lot of people back because, they think they failed. And I really preach, like, if you can honestly say that you tried and you did the best you could do, I don't consider that a failure. I just, if you applied for a job and you didn't get the job, but you tried your absolute best, someone was just more prepared than you were. And that's
more skilled or more, it doesn't make them better or worse. Yeah.
Right. And it's just, it can set the bar for, where you can improve and where you can do better. So it's all about, like, you're at where you're at, and that's fine. You're exactly where you should be. And so, yeah, I think that it's fears when they hold us back, they can lead to that, life of mediocrity that I feared before I got sober. And I've just realized it's just not the truth. You can always walk through.
Lisa, you want to throw out our last question? We always have a good last question for you.
So one of the things you said, when you start your day with your mindfulness, and you often will read a passage or something that you're into, is there any book or even a podcast or anything that, either you're currently reading or you're into or you find really important that you'd like to share with the audience?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I always read two books simultaneously. So I read one, like, nonfiction about try to, learn something new. And then another is either like a biography, something to motivate me, or some fiction. So what I recently read was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, which I really recommend it. It's super motivational, and it's a story about, a guy who had significant adversity and he overcame all these, challenges, and, is just constantly trying to improve himself. And I'm also reading, what's it called? Irresistible. Irresistible. So it's by Adam Alter, and it's about technology addiction, and how our phones have just become an extension of ourselves, and just screens are just we're turning into just screens. And it's kind of a stark reminder to me. Like, it made me set my time on my phone to kind of monitor how long I'm on it, and it's kind of scary. I saw it the other day, it was like 3.5 hours, and I'm like, oh my God. So yeah.
That's
So
good.
those two I recommend.
Yeah, those are great. I'm gonna just so you know, when we post this, we will post your link to your site as well as the books, because I think these are just great reference books. It's my favorite question because I love podcasts, I love reading. It's a huge hobby of mine. So I'm so grateful that you agreed to be our guest, and I'm so grateful that you're having an anniversary this month. And
thank you so much. Stay in touch with us. We love to stay connected to folks who have been through our program. So, I can't wait to hear from you when it's 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years. So
you're part of us now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Hope you have a good day.
You too. Take care.